What's going on, everybody? We are continuing our countdown of every Seinfeld episode. This one, we are counting down from 85 to 70. So let's go. All right. Number 85, the soulmate from season 8. George is convinced the chairman of the Susan Foundation thinks he killed Susan, so he records their conversation when he's not there. Elaine meets some old friends who say she has to have a baby, and Jerry's new girlfriend Pam drops in on Jerry but talks to Kramer, and Kramer falls in love with her, and they kind of fight about it. This was a pretty weak episode. All the plots did not do well. George leaves us a briefcase, and then the briefcase breaks or something like that, and it reveals that he was recording them, and it turns out that they did think that he killed her. So okay. The interesting thing about Elaine is that she meets a guy who actually turns out to be, I believe it's the next episode, the Bizarro Jerry. He is the main guy from the Bizarro Jerry world. His boyfriend's her boyfriend's name is Kevin, and at some point, I don't know why, either Elaine and Jerry's girlfriend don't want to have kids, so every guy in this episode, Kramer, Jerry, Newman, Kevin, they all get vasectomies. Like what the heck was that? One thing about Jerry's girlfriend Pam, she looked a lot like Meryl Streep. Also, there is a library scene where Newman was feeding lines to Kramer. That was pretty cute. But yeah, everybody gets a vasectomy. That was just weird. So that's number 85. The soulmate. Number 84, the invitations. It's time for George and Susan's wedding, but George doesn't think he could go through it. And Jerry finds a woman that's almost exactly like him. Kramer goes to the bank, and the bank's policy is if they don't greet him with a hello, then they get $100. And I don't think Elaine had anything to do in this episode. But the main thing is, this is the episode where Susan dies. And I think this is one of the worst moments in the entire series. Susan dies because George picks the cheap invitations with the bad glue. And the doctor tells him she's dead. And George and the gang basically are like, oh, she's dead. Okay, bye. And that's it. I thought that was one of the worst moments of the series. Like, how can you be that callous and indifferent about somebody that just died? That's just weird. Also, every wedding I know about, the bride's family pays for all that. So they would have paid for the invitation. So why did they go cheap in the first place? I don't know. And why didn't George know that her family was rich? Why didn't he find this out later? That was weird also. But the way George tries to get out of it before she dies is he pretends to smoke. Then he says he wants a prenup, and she's like, oh, you want a prenup? Fine. I make more money than you. And then the final scene, George calls Marissa Tomei to say, hey, I'm not married. I'm not engaged anymore. That was pretty good. So it's still weird. So that's 84, the invitations. Number 83, the letter from season 3. This is where Jerry has an artist friend that George is getting to know, so he buys a painting from her. Jerry breaks up with her, and she plagiarizes a letter. There's also a plot where Elaine refuses to remove her Baltimore Orioles cap during a Yankees game. But the big thing about this episode is the Kramer. I had a shirt with the Kramer on it. I gotta get a portrait of the Kramer. this is one of the best scenes in this series, when the old couple is looking at the Kramer and just just commenting on him. They say, I sense great vulnerability, a man child crying out for love, an innocent orphan in the postmodern world. I see a parasite, a sexually depraved miscreant who's seeking to gratify only his most basic and immediate urges. He is struggled. He is man struggle. He is a loathsome, offensive brute, yet I cannot look away. That is one of the great lines from the series. And then the scene where Jerry is reading the letter, and it's from the Neil Simon play, Chapter 2. I don't know what that is. I'm not familiar with that, but so that was a great scene. So that was the letter from season 3. Number 82, the wallet from season 4. Jerry's parents are in town so that Morty can see a specialist about his back, and his wallet goes missing. There's the whole plot with the watch. Jerry throws away the watch, and Uncle Leo picks it up. This is in the middle of the plot with the whole show within a show thing, and George plays hardball with them, demanding a better deal. And Elaine comes back from Europe trying to break up with her psychiatrist boyfriend. This is another iconic scene, or iconic phrase in Seinfeld. My wallet's gone. My wallet's gone. I just recently went to the doctor, and I felt everything from this episode of when they make you wait, they put you in that gown. Can we do something about the hospital gown or the gown they put you in the doctor's office? It is so unflattering. They have you just flapping in the back there. So humiliating. I hate that thing. But yeah, that was crazy. There was also the thing about Kramer was telling Jerry's parents that crazy Joe Davola was after him, and Jerry's mom keeps going on. It's like, how can anyone not like you? You're a wonderful, wonderful boy. That's basically every mom. Every mom thinks that their baby is wonderful. But the thing about Elaine and the psychiatrist, she says, he has his power over me. Okay, he has his way of manipulating every word I say. He's like a Sven Jolly. And the psychiatrist says to Elaine, do you remember the dream where you made love to a Chinese woman? That was silly. So anyway, that was the wallet from season 4. My wallet's gone. Number 81, the pitch from season 4. This is the one where they come up with the idea for the show within the show. Also, Kramer swaps his metal radar detector with Newman, and he doesn't tell him it doesn't work, and Newman gets a speeding ticket. Yeah, this is where Jerry and George pitch the idea to NBC, and also we meet crazy Joe Davola, which is funny because Joe Davola was Joe Davola and Lloyd Braun are real people, and they were executives and stuff. So anyway, so yeah, they're talking about the show. They say everyone's doing something, we'll do nothing. And this is another one of the iconic scenes where George says, I think I could sum up the show with you in one word: nothing. That was good. And we also meet Russell Dalrymple and Susan for the first time. And Russell says, well, why am I watching? And George says, because it's on TV. And he says, not yet. And then they mimic a scene that actually happened in real life. I guess Larry David actually did tell off the executives at some point. But George says, okay, look, if you want to just keep on doing the same old thing, then maybe this idea is not for you. I, for one, am not going to compromise my artistic integrity. And let me tell you something else. This is the show, and we're not going to change it. That apparently actually did happen. Also, there was a great scene that I loved where Jerry gets a phone call and it's from a long distance company. And he says, I can't talk right now. Why don't you give me your home number and I'll call you later? And the guy says, well, we're not allowed to do that. And Jerry says, oh, I guess you don't want people calling you at home. The guy says, no. It's like, well, now you know how I feel. Bam. I would love to do that. Also, this is the episode where Kramer throws up on Susan because he drinks expired milk. And September 3rd is the unofficial holiday of expired milk day for Seinfeld. So please celebrate on September 3rd by drinking expired milk. Number 80, the CAFÉ. Jerry is fascinated with the new cafe that's open across the street. The owner is Pakistani immigrant Babu, and he has few customers, and Jerry suggests that he switch to all Pakistani menu. So there's that plot. Then there is George's girlfriend wants him to take an IQ test, and Elaine takes it for him, and that all gets crazy. I don't think Kramer has anything to do in this episode, but not a whole lot. I mean, that's just a real funny plot of George having someone else take an IQ test for him. Elaine does lousy the first time. She only gets an 85, and apparently she has an IQ of like 145. And then she retakes it, but she's delayed. And so George basically the jig is up, and George just leaves. And so the girlfriend is waiting for Elaine, and Elaine, the girlfriend says, I hope you do a lot better this time. And she did. She got like a 151 or something like that. Number 79, the non-fat yogurt from season 5. Kramer invests in a new non-fat yogurt store, which becomes a hit in the city, but it's not. Jerry and Elaine have been gaining weight and wondering if the yogurt is really non-fat. Also, there is a kid that's the kid of the owner of the non-fat yogurt store, and he hears Jerry swearing, so then he starts swearing like crazy. And George runs into former childhood acquaintance Lloyd Braun, who's working on the mayoral campaign for Mayor Dinkins, but the campaign is jeopardized because he dates Elaine, and Elaine proposes a name tag system. Also, Kramer is going out with a lab technician and dumps some of the yogurt into Mayor Rudy Giuliani's sample, and they think that his cholesterol is high or something like that. So really funny seeing Rudy Giuliani in here. This, really Rudy Giuliani went from mayor of New York City to, well, we won't talk about it. But and also for some reason, George says that he has a weird thing with his elbow, that it just keeps sticking out. And then Lloyd Braun refers him to a doctor, and there's a whole crap about that. So yeah, that was the non-fat yogurt. Number 78, the handicap spot from season 4. The gang goes out shopping for a joint gift for a couple who are about to get married. George is using his father's car and parks in a handicap spot, and then somebody gets a handicapped person has to park far away, and they get hurt, and there's a mob near the car or something like that. So that whole crazy thing. There's and then and then Kramer falls in love with the girl that's in the handicap spot, and they buy a wheelchair for her, but the wheelchair is defective, so she ends up rolling down a hill. This is the episode where we hear about the Drake. Love the Drake, and the Drakette. But when they go to see the Drake, they find out that they just broke up. They were just about to get engaged, but they broke up, and for some reason, Drake's ex-fiance takes all of the gifts and gives them away. Like, hello, why don't you give them back to the people? What is this? Another notable thing about this episode is originally they had another actor be George's dad, and then they switched him out. I saw the episode with the original actor John Randolph. Ugh. They made a good choice just switching to Jerry Stiller. There's also George's dad's car is ruined because the mob got to it, or this angry mob got to it, and one of George's parents' friends say, maybe you ought to make him your butler, like in the plot of the pilot. There's a lot of handicap humor, which is probably not politically correct. Like when Kramer says, she's got everything I've ever wanted in a human being except for the walking. Oh man. And then the wheelchair salesman, he's trying to sell him a wheelchair. This is the best model, the Cougar 9000. It's the Rolls Royce of wheelchairs. This is like, you're almost glad to be handicapped. Oh, come on. Come on, people. Eventually the handicap woman dumps Kramer and calls him a hipster doofus. Oh boy. Number 77, the Visa from season 4. Jerry returns from out of town, and he gets Babu's visa application, but he gets it by mistake, and Babu ends up being deported because the mail got switched up and whatever. George talks to an attractive lawyer, and it actually is Ping's cousin who is suing Elaine, and there's and then she was supposed to help with Babu's case, but they break up. We'll talk about that in a second. Also, Kramer returns early from fantasy baseball camp because he got into a fight with Joe Pepitone and knocked out Mickey Mantle. This is another Babu episode. Daddy, you're a very good man. You're a bad man. You're a bad man. There's the line from, they're talking about Kramer, and George says, Kramer goes to a fantasy camp. His whole life is a fantasy camp. People should plunk down $2,000 to live like him for a week. Do nothing, fall ass backwards in the money, mooch food off your neighbors, and have sex without dating. That's a fantasy camp. But the main thing is George meets this lawyer and tries to be the funny one. And he knows that when she sees Jerry, and Jerry actually is the funny one, that he's going to not look as funny. So he tells Jerry to not be funny. And that is one of the funniest things of this series, is Jerry trying to be dark. Dark Jerry is so funny. They're all together, and somebody mentioned something about a birthday, and Jerry's all dark. He says, well, birthdays are merely symbolic of how another year has gone by and how little we've grown. No matter how desperate we are, that someday a better self will emerge. With each flicker of the candles on the cake, we know it's not to be. For the rest of our sad, wretched, pathetic lives, this is who we are to the bitter end. Inevitably, irrevocably. Happy birthday. No such thing. And she is so attracted to him. She's so attracted to Dark Jerry. And then George has to tell her, no, I put him up to that. And at the end, he says, I'm disturbed. I'm depressed. I'm inadequate. I've got it all. So funny. Number 76, the Summer of George from season 8. So George has 3 months severance pay from the Yankees. George decides he's going to have a great summer, but that doesn't go quite as planned. Jerry is dating someone new who he invites to attend the Tony Awards, but when he picks her up, it looks like she already has a boyfriend. And Kramer is at the awards ceremony and ends up on stage and wins a Tony. but he has to keep the Tony, he has to get rid of Raquel Welch. And at work, Elaine makes a comment about a coworker not moving her arms, and the coworker goes crazy on her. So in the end, George slips on the invitations, ironically, and is paralyzed temporarily. And he says, this is supposed to be the summer of George. And there's a whole thing about Elaine, and guys really want to see girls fight, so they kept saying cat fight. Okay, whatever. Number 75, the sponge from season 7. Elaine's birth control method is being discontinued, so after she finds it, she puts her guys on interviews to see if they're sponge worthy. This is also the one where Kramer participates in the AIDS walk and refuses to wear the ribbon, and which was really funny. And then George meets a woman and doesn't get her phone number, and he gets it off the list of participants from the AIDS walk. But it's a whole thing about keeping secrets, and George tells Susan, and Susan tells someone else, and whatever. The big thing is, the iconic phrase "sponge-worthy." That's what we get out of it. But also the phrase, the scene where Kramer refuses to wear the AIDS ribbon, and we meet, I think his name's Cedric and Bob or something like that, and they turn around, it's like, who does not want to wear the ribbon? And they beat him up. Number 74, the cigar store Indian from season 5. Jerry is deemed a racist when he purchases a Native American statue for Elaine. Kramer tries to get Elaine's company to publish his coffee table book about coffee tables. Elaine runs into a really creepy man on the subway who steals Frank's TV guide and follows her to the Costanza's house. And George gets grounded when he has sex with a woman in his parents' bed. There's a lot of good stuff here. There's a lot not that hits. The whole thing about Jerry and trying to date Winona is anytime that there would be a Native American phrase or something like that, he would like dance around it. Like, when they say they went to a restaurant, he can't say that they got reservations or that he got tickets from a scalper or someone's an Indian giver or something like that. This is where Kramer gets the idea. It's like, hey, you know what would make a great coffee table book? A coffee table book about coffee tables. And then, he meets up with Mr. Lipman and gives him the idea. This is where we meet Ricky, which is one of the great one-off characters. Actually, he was in 2 episodes. Obsessed with the TV guide. It was really cute when Ricky and Frank got together and talked about their love of the TV guide. That was cute. The TV guide had Al Roker on the cover. Fat Al Roker. It was very weird seeing Fat Al Roker at the end of this episode. But George getting grounded when he has sex with a woman in his parents' bed. That's a great scene. That's a great scene where Frank, George's dad says, "Who told you could have sex in our bed?" And George says, "Well, my bed is too small." And George's dad says, "Your bed is too small? I'm gone 2 weeks and you turn our house into Bourbon Street?" That was great. Also, I love when Ricky says to Elaine, "You look scrumptious." Number 73, the 7 from season 7. George meets Susan's cousins who are about to have a baby, and they have a hard time agreeing on a name. And they find out that George wants 7. George wants the name 7 for his kids eventually someday. And but the cousins take the idea, and George freaks out. Elaine buys an antique bicycle and hurts her neck in the process. Kramer fixes her neck and wants the bicycle in exchange. because she would give it to him. And Jerry's new girlfriend wears the same dress every day. Okay. I know it's I apparently, okay, it's a thing that, it's basically the Jerry girlfriend of the week, but she wears the same dress every day. Who, like, really? This is what we're breaking up with women for. Elaine and Kramer go to an impartial judge to determine who should get the bike, and it's Newman. Newman is Kramer's friend. How is he impartial? That was weird. That's number 73, the 7. Number 72, the wife from season 5. Jerry gets a permanent discount at a local dry cleaners after returning a locket he found in a jacket. And his new girlfriend, Meryl, claims a discount because they say she's Jerry's wife. But then it gets out of hand and they pretend they're married and it does not go well. Elaine thinks an airline pilot who goes to the same health club has interest, but quickly when he wipes the top of her water bottle. But George is in trouble when the pilot sees him urinating in the shower at the same club. And there's a whole thing with Kramer and not getting enough sleep. So he goes to a tanning bed. He goes to a tanning bed too long and he's too dark, and he's meeting his girlfriend who's African-American or something like that. Oh, I don't even want to talk about that. But anyway, this is where there's two things. First of all, this is Courtney Cox right before she got on Friends. So this was significant. Also, this is a great scene about the peeing in the drain, and he says, I was there, I saw a drain. Since when is a drain a toilet? And George says, it's all pipes. What's the difference? I still use that phrase all the time. Different pipes go to different places. And Jerry says, all right, can we just drop all the pee pipe stuff? Great stuff. Number 71, the parking space from season 3. Coming from the flea market, Elaine and George damage Jerry's car when George drives over a pothole. And then they try to find a parking space, and someone else tries to get in that space too. So they fight over the parking space, and that goes on all day. And Elaine comes up with this elaborate story about damage to the car. And Kramer doesn't do much. Kramer is just mad because George and Elaine went to the flea market without him. What's really what I just learned is that this episode was written by Larry David and Greg Daniels, the creator of The Office and Parks and Rec and King of the Hill. So, basically a TV comedy titan. And I like when George says that he's obsessed with not paying for parking. He said it's like going to a prostitute. Why should I pay when if I apply myself, I could get one for free? Okay. But this is also the episode where Kramer's friend Mike calls Jerry a phony, and Jerry confronts him about it, and Mike says, you completely misunderstood what I said. I meant it in a complimentary way. I mean, when people say he's bad, that means he's good, that sort of thing, slang. And Jerry says, use it in a sentence. And Mike says, that Michael Jordan is so phony. Love that. Elaine's story was about a pack of wild teenagers that chased them, but that they eventually find out that's on it. So that was the parking space. Number 70, the Van Buren boys. Kramer has a run-in with a gang named after President Van Buren when he accidentally flashes their secret sign and becomes a member of the gang. Elaine has to ghostwrite Peterman's autobiography and uses Kramer's stories as filler material. And George has to pick a scholarship recipient and picks an average Joe instead of an overachiever. And Jerry's girlfriend it seems like there's nothing wrong with her, but everybody thinks she's a loser. I still don't understand that plot. This was Christine Taylor, who ended up marrying Ben Stiller, who was Jerry Stiller's son, who is Frank Costanza. So basically, she's Frank Costanza's daughter-in-law. So would he be related? Would she be related to George? I don't know, but so it was, and I always, every time I think of Christine Taylor, I always think she was Marsha. She's a perfect Marsha, and she was in those Brady Bunch movies. I like when George says his GPA is a solid 2.0, right in that meaty part of the curve, not showing off, not falling behind. But the whole thing with Peterman is, I love Peterman, but he was just blah in this episode. He didn't want to talk about anything, do anything interesting, or talk about interesting. He's just in his apartment, his boring apartment in sweatpants, doing nothing. It was just very, very dumb. So that is number 70, the Van Buren Boys. All right, so we are continuing here. This was, I believe, part 6. We are into the tops from 69 to 1. So I try to do these once a week. So here we go. Thanks for listening or watching. See ya.